Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. I'm Niresh Eliathambi. Now, just a few months ago, it seemed like the presidential election would be a two-horse race. But increasingly, it has become a three-cornered tussle with President Ranil Wickremesinghe entering the fray and doing quite well in various quarters. If we were to believe some of the polls, he's doing very well. But if we were to believe other polls, he's not doing that great. And to talk about all this, we have with us this evening, no stranger to our show, Mr. Ravi Karunanayake. Welcome, Ravi.
Good evening, Niresh.
So, Ravi, usually I read out the pedigree of our guests, but you have a very lengthy one. But I will keep it short and say you are the National Secretary of the UNP and a former Minister of Finance and Foreign Affairs and many other ministries. So certainly not short on experience. And experience, it appears, is what is standing President Wickremesinghe in good stead in this campaign. Would you agree?
I totally agree with that. It's not a time for testing or putting an elbow and going forward. It is a time when the country is in absolute chaos. Navigating through these turbulent times has to have the business acumen, the political knowledge, and the experience handling the world. And I think those three all are there in President Wickremesinghe.
But Ravi, what about his team? We know that when the UNP split several years ago, a large faction formed the SJB, and that's a lot of knowledge which was lost. Of course, stalwarts such as yourself opted to stay with the UNP, and your knowledge is there. But people like you are somewhat of a rarity in the UNP, which, well, if you will forgive me for saying it, shrank in size quite a bit, and to the point where in the last election your party won only one seat in Parliament. Is this lack of depth a worrying factor?
Well, Niresh, I must say I thank you for asking that question. My belief is that the UNP has gone through transformation. There was a general feeling that we were out of step, may have been out of reality, etc. But we have paid that price, and we humbly accept that what the voters did tell us. We feel that we have rejuvenated ourselves, we have reignited ourselves with the experience, with the know-how that is there, with new faces that is there, and we are ready to take the battle on to the next level. So I think now that we have gone through that transformation, and you said that there was a party, that basically left us and formed another one, but I must say almost a good 35–40% of that in MP wise has come. And I guess as voters, I'm sure the genuineness of the UMPers will be with Wickremesinghe rather than anybody else, because at that time there was a general phobia that was being said that he will not be able to make it into the political leadership. But finally, with one MP in Parliament, with the help of all the other MPs in Parliament, he took the reins when nobody was willing to do so. Others were running helter-skelter. Ranil lost his house. I mean, it was burnt down. He didn't even have, clothes that were there to take on. But he had the conviction that if he's given the opportunity, his experience will carry through. And today, God willing, the country is looking at that. I must say the cost of living and the general living conditions are not easy, but certainly much better than what it was 25 months ago, when you couldn't have your basics that were being able to be bought out. But today it's a different thing. And I guess with the general public, they are the ones who took the challenge. I must say it's not the government, because they are the ones who took the hardcore activities and the hardship were felt, and today the dividends are coming out.
Now let's talk about that cost of living factor in this coming election, because it is, in my opinion, the deciding factor. We have approximately 7 million people who are below the poverty line, and that is indeed a terrible number, which of course President Wickremesinghe would be looking to improve on in his next term if he does win. But how badly do you think that will affect the election?
Certainly incumbency does have its price to pay, but this incumbency is something which is unique, because in 2019 when there was an election, there was a general feeling the previous government did not do good enough, and they thought the other side of the hill was far better than this side. They had made the change, and you could see that within 6 months you saw that there was a severe erosion of revenue, which was done with the knowledge, not that it was something forced upon. There was 600 billion revenue loss. That had the first impact on the economic slide that was taking place 2 years later. And in 22 you had the bankruptcy, simply because you basically could not deliver the reduction in revenue to the increase in the economic activity in the country. So today President Wickremesinghe has been able to mobilize or garner all support and bring it from sense of desperation to a sense of able to live in a fairly peaceful manner, but certainly not in the manner that people would like to be. But I must say there's a grudging acceptance that he has done something when others were basically lost in space. Today, if you look at the comparison, except for the dollar, which basically was 182 to 305, the cost of living has not reduced in the manner or increased in the manner of the dollar. That is, 72% is any case on an import based economy. So I would basically say today there are increases in the cost of living, but certainly it is moving in the right direction.
Now, would it be fair to say that President Wickremesinghe started his caretaker presidency on the worst possible hand was dealt to him?
Absolutely. I mean, there was no hand. That's why all the people that were offered ran and said, no, we don't want to take it, simply because they thought that was a political suicidal approach. Certainly Ranil Wickremesinghe decided to take that because he said he had the experience and somebody had to do it. Imagine if he also had not, and it just went into anarchy, what would have been the case? I mean, Bangladesh is a sitting example. You could see what type of mayhem that followed in the last 2-3 months. So my feeling is he got the worst of hands, but also he had the sagacity to take the most definitive and most toughest economic financial discipline, because if you did not do that at that time, you wouldn't have had the revenue base in order to speak to what it is today. So I must say he boldly decided to take that revenue increase. I mean, when you say elections are around the corner in 2 years when it started, and you're basically saying, no, I am going to increase the taxes, he basically put it on the right footing. And today you can say at the economy is moving out of the bankruptcy that was there. So the creditors have accepted that this is a country that can afford to pay its loans from 2028 or 2033 in its full pace. So I would say that financial discipline was the investment he made. When he took on, I don't think anybody would have done so, because that was a bold, daring decision.
Now let's talk about the creditors whom you just mentioned.
Yeah.
What is the status of that? There were some decisions which were to come.
Correct. Nilesh, now you could see, if I recall from my memory, there was $100 billion that was known as outstandings. Of that, there was 38 billion that has got to be done from the Paris Club and the international sovereign bonds. And the 53 billion has been from the domestic debt, and then end of the day you basically had the total endorsement of the Paris Club on the areas of acceptance in the manner that they discussed. The bondholders, international sovereign bondholders, except for 85%, all the others have accepted. So the majority have accepted it. So it is only the equal treatment that had got to be done. Because when you are dealing with this, the IMF goes through the equal treatment test. And at that particular one, there's a ratification of certain things, and from there onward, it's good to go. Right. So as of now, the creditworthiness is accepted, and it is a country on the move.
So would it be safe to say that all the hard decisions have already been taken in the last 2 to 2.5 years?
Through compulsion, through conviction, it happened, because there was no other opportunity. I am a great believer that IMF was one option, but once you go bankrupt, there's no other option but IMF. And in that process, you've got to deal hard with them. And I guess today it has had its reward, or the dividends, by ensuring that we have stood to a particular methodology, and it has been accepted. Revenues are coming in, even though sometimes it is unbearable on the general consumer. But you could see that the benefits are trickling in rather than having a wearing off effect.
Ravi, what would you say to those who repeatedly say that the IMF deal could have been a better one, and that they would renegotiate it if they come to office?
Well, being a person who negotiated the 16th IMF disbursement EFC with Sri Lanka, I must say that it is a very easy task to take on to say this IMF agreement and we can change. IMF agreement is something which is sacrosanct, and there are certain principles that you cannot basically do away with. Yes, it is democratically possible, but it's impossible because IMF has basically bestowed, the Paris Club has bestowed the right to IMF on behalf of the 18 countries to negotiate with the government. Now, when you do that, there is a certain revenue increase that is required. There is certain prime balance that is required to be maintained. Then also to ensure that the creditors are being paid from such and such a date. Now, all those have to have a way forward. You just can't get up today and say, I'm going to renegotiate, because IMF is a lender of last resort to countries that have gone bankrupt or balance of payments problem. And as a result, they have got to come and basically negotiate clauses one by one. Now, that's why President Wickremesinghe yesterday challenged the two principal opposition parties, Sajith and Anura, to reveal, they are saying it is to say that they can renegotiate the IMF agreement. Come and discuss as to how you're going to do that. If you say so, here it is. If not, you'll be either ending up by saying that you're lying to the people. Now, I don't think, I mean, being a politician such as President Wickremesinghe, it is a folly to think that when you can basically afford to give the best, that he has not given it, because he is also standing for re-election. So on that basis, what they have come forward is to come with the best of the worst case that is there, and ensure that you resurrect the country from the bankruptcy that was basically pushed in. It's not he that went into bankruptcy. It is the previous regime that went in, and he had to resurrect it. So he and the team have done, and your question to me, is it easy, is it possible? For my this thing, 99.9% is not possible. I mean, if you suddenly say, okay, you've got oil field and here is the revenue coming in, that's a different one. But that is not part of IMF negotiation. You know, you have got to say, yes, my revenue increased. When he inherited, it was 8.2% of GDP. And I mean, the same like what I inherited in 2015, it was 8.2%, which was pushed to 15%. He is doing the same thing. So revenue has to increase, and then the expenditure is curtailed, and ensure that there is a sense of revenue increase that is being shown that can be used to pay the loans that are there in 2028. So those are the areas that you can afford to say, I'll give everything free and everything for nothing approach. That is how the 2019 government went into bankruptcy so quickly. I mean, when you lose 600 billion of your revenues, that is 3% of GDP, I'm sorry, 4% of GDP, you just can't come out of it unless there is a substantial increase in the GDP. So that is the issue that took place.
Now, Ravi, we as Sri Lankans, we are used to IMF programs. We've gone to the IMF so many times, and as you said, during the Yahapalana government also, we went.
This is the 17th time.
This is the 17th time. You know, during Yahapalana, there was no economic crash. We didn't even
we did it as abundance of caution.
Exactly.
At that time.
Yes. But in between that government and this one, well, look at what happened. And one wonders why it happened. And it's easy to blame President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who of course must share much of the blame. But what happened to all the central bankers, the people in the finance ministries, people in private sector in Sri Lanka? What happened to them?
Very, very pertinent question, and I would love to answer that. My feeling is that that's the lack of professionalism or the ability to lead that through the difficult times, because sometimes officials come with various harebrained schemes, but you must be able to make the right decision and ensure that you go forward with that. So it's no point blaming a person, it is the entire team, and I basically ensure that the professionals who led it should be made to answer as to what happened. I mean, not only that, even the opposition didn't know the country was heading into disaster. I mean, here it is, you go into bankruptcy and the opposition didn't know that you are going towards that. It was Ranil Wickremesinghe who came in subsequently and said, this is no go, this is the way to go forward. I must say, in 2019 when we came forward, sorry, 2020 when we had the general election, in our manifesto, we very clearly mentioned that this country has had a revenue drop and it is heading towards absolute disaster. If you do not have at least $6 to $7 billion coming in from foreign investments or loans or IMF backup facility, you would head into a major problem, and that's exactly what happened. So these are the ones that it's not rocket science that is there, it is just practical knowledge that comes out, and that is why I feel it is sometimes very worrisome. A country just went down the brink in just a couple of weeks. I mean, that's why to make a country takes such a long, painful, arduous task, but to go into bankruptcy, it just takes a couple of days. And to regain it back to that lost status takes such a painful time. That's what we are going through now.
So, bringing it back to what it was, how is that going to be done?
Well, firstly, I must sincerely thank the citizens of Sri Lanka, because they have gone through many perilous times, some with their knowledge, some without their knowledge. Now, when a country goes into bankruptcy, I don't think they had any focus of clue as to why they are going in. It's just bad management that is there. And bad management is not a day, 2 days or 1 year. It has been a continuous process. Now, that is the place where politics have played a disastrous role. They offer everything for nothing, and they basically think that is the way forward for winning the next election, not knowing that after 76 years, the country could not stand any more of those goodies. Finally, you had the revenues dropping, sagging, and then you had the costs going up. So that yawning gap made the country bankrupt. That bankruptcy is what we are basically paying the price. Now you're going to come out of it. The way out of it is exporting your debt out of the system. That's the only way possible. You must be able to export anything that is possible, get the dollar, ensure the country gets a revenue that is so badly required, and ensure we get into the next stage. That is the only way out of it. Now, when I say you need to export your debt out of the system, means that the debt that is there, roughly 8 trillion, needs to basically find a way forward, because in 2028 you'll be paying roughly 300-400 million. Then by 2032 you'll be called upon to pay roughly about 4, 5, 6 billion. Now, in order to get to that, you are today getting ready, but we don't seem to be getting ready to have that start at the moment. Now, when you have 13 billion as exports earnings, you have about 18, 19 billion as imports, you have a gap. Now that's met with the balance of payments and through remittances coming in from overseas, roughly about 6 to 7 billion. Then you have tourism incomes that come in roughly 5 to 6 billion. Then we have a surplus at the moment. Now, in order to ensure that sustainability, we must push ourselves to have an export earning of roughly about 20, 21 billion. Now, we have been talking of this. When we come into the point, we have major, I would say, governmental breakdowns that doesn't help us to export ourselves out of the problem. Why do I say that? The government machinery is so slow to take a decision. It takes months. I guess if we don't change this system, this country will again run into these type of daring problems in the next couple of years. That's why I must say I take my hats off to President Wickremesinghe for being bold and daring and ensure that he basically stem the cost increases, ensure the revenue increases keep going on, and ensure that we show the way forward in a tactical manner, in a strategical manner, in a perspective planning manner. So you have the 1 year, 5 year and the 10 year into 2048. Now these are easy things to say. These are all theoretical exercises or imagination or hallucination. It's not the case. You need to have that perspective planning to take the country to the next step. Lack of it is what we have paid the price. 76 years of independence has not led us to economic freedom. We may have freedom, but not the pure economic freedom that we deserve to have.
Now, Ravi, is this growth fast enough? And when you look back, President Wickremesinghe inherited an economy which was shrinking by more than 3% a year. And now, of course, it is growing at around 2% a year or so. But is that fast enough to keep pace with our debt requirements? We, as you mentioned, in 2028, we've got a lot of debt coming due. President Wickremesinghe kicked it down the road to 2028, but
I mean, there's no other option, Niresh, because if you didn't, we wouldn't have had the resources to pay for it. So it was the sagacity that basically led to that, where you basically pushed your payment terms into an affordable way and ensure that 2028 we start paying in a 300-400-500 million mark, and then by 2032 you're ready to pay the 7-8 billion, where we have basically had haircuts, then we had interest reductions. Also, the payment plan of the loans have been extended.
But again, I repeat that question: is it fast enough?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We need a hyper galloping GDP increase. Should be in the range of 7 to 9%. But in order to do that, I said there is bureaucratic terrorism that is existing. I mean, you basically have a document to be approved. It takes 3 weeks. You know, simple process that takes a laborious process needs to be digitized immediately. The digitization is the only way to take the country to the next step. Remember, Eastern Europe is a good example. They were lagging behind in Europe, and suddenly their collapse or the wall breaking helped them to see the world in a different manner. They leapfrogged themselves from where they were to the next step by ensuring that they go into digitization at that time. And today, those countries are booming. Sri Lanka is the only way forward is to ensure we digitize, we stop the duplications of resources that are being made with this type of thing. Now today, welfare subsidies get duplicated 3-4 times over. When you say the Aswasuma, there are 2.3 million families at the moment, about 1.9 to 2 million are getting, but there are deficiencies there. But if you have like the Indian system, the Adesh system in India, you digitize, it will be going to the person in the right manner, in the right speed, evading all the racketeers that basically have a field day in normal circumstances. So I'm sorry, I thought it needs to have a very open discussion rather than play around with words. You need to have a complete change, and that change has to be done in a daring manner. That's where the people will feel that the benefits are trickling down. Because today you have the government servants roughly taking almost 1.8 trillion of salaries out of the taxpayers. So the pensions and the salaries gobble almost 70 to 80% of the total revenue that comes on taxation. So where on earth, how are you going to do the country development in capital investments, then your education, your health, your loan payments, all have to come from this.
Bureaucratic terrorism. That's an interesting term, but it aptly describes many of our government departments. But Ravi, now you spoke of the enormous amount of money, taxpayer money, which is going towards salaries.
Yeah.
Let's keep the pensions aside. After all, pensioners do deserve it.
But they deserve a bigger share than just getting a pension. They also have inflation that is there.
Right.
When I said that, I said it with remorse because they are just getting on today's terms. But they are also facing the inflation that everybody else faces. So why I put that in to ensure that there has to be quality and ability to live on your pensions as well. But today many can't. So the salary increases should be basically affordable as well as it should be meaningful to the country. We have 1.7 million government servants, which is for every one citizen you have, for every 11 citizens you have one government servant. I mean, in countries like Japan, in England, in India, you have roughly about 1,000 for one. So there is some problem in this country. That needs to be corrected because there is no value for money. I mean, you pay, you don't get a value out of that payment that you made.
Now, digitization, which this government has been focusing on and promises a lot if elected again, that would be the way forward. But then what do you do with these 1.7 million?
No,
people?
every single one of them should be gainfully employed. I'm saying that with full responsibility. Is not just removing and relocating them in another place, making them meaningfully useful in their process. Now, why do I say that? Digitization, I guess every government servant would love to see that they are also helpful in nation development. What basically has got to be done, when you digitize yourself, you're basically having more time in your hands to do many things because you are on an automatic process. Now, what happens to the rest? You are able to do for revenue collection. You change them from doing a clerical role into revenue collection. You can look at them from being more public relations oriented. Now, when you go to a passport office, now in a day you get, but there are times when you have people that are coming in having problems. You can expand those activities that are there. Then you look at the areas of customs, they can be much more user friendly or they can be much more consumer friendly. They are also very wealth of knowledge in them. We must use them for nation development. I mean, at the moment they are getting 1 trillion revenue from that place. That can get at least a 3 trillion revenue. Now that is what needs to be corrected. So my belief is that not a single should be shredded. They must be given the opportunity. The best will find their own future, but otherwise all of them should be brought into a pool that will basically help to increase the economic activities in the country. But the surplus is in the areas of drivers, the clericals, the labor, rather than the thinking. Now, is it right? I'm asking. That is why there has been a rectification on the salary. A secretary in a ministry get maybe 200, 300,000 when he should be in the range of about 700, 800,000. The managers should be getting, say, 3, 4, 500,000 so that they are able to fight with the private sector. But today, owing to the fact that there are the lower order is so great that they are developing the revenues that can be given to decision makers in this country. That's the way I believe that the country should have a transformation in the bureaucracy.
Interesting
because it should not be
indeed.
political, it should be basically nation development.
We are in conversation with Ravi Karunanayake, National Secretary of the UNP. We will cross over for a short commercial break right now. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
ජනප්‍රිය ගායන ශිල්පී ප්‍රවීන් සුරංගගේ නවතම ගීතය Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube ඇතුළු ඔබගේ ප්‍රියතම සංගීත සේවාවන් හරහා රස විඳින්න.
Entertainments.
මේ ලේනේද?
හැරි? ඔයා හොර ගෙඩියෙක්. මාව සර්ප්‍රයිස් කරන්න නේද හැදුවේ?
ඔයා හොරෙක්. #thief. ඔයා ගෙදරින් වටින දේවල් අරගෙන පැනලා යනවනේ.
හරේන්ද්‍ර එන්නේ නැද්ද? හැම මොහොතෙම හැම දවසෙම ඔයා චිකු ගැන හිතනවා හැබැයි එයා ඔයාගේ ලේ කියලා පිළිගන්න කැමති නැහැ.
ඉන්නේ අද රාත්‍රී 9:30ට සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්.
ජනප්‍රිය ගායන ශිල්පී ප්‍රවීන් සුරංගගේ නවතම ගීතය Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube ඇතුළු ඔබගේ ප්‍රියතම සංගීත සේවාවන් හරහා රස විඳින්න.
Entertainments.
The annual Nallur Festival 2024. Join us at the Shakti TV Nallur live studio from the 30th of August to the 1st of September, and tune in to Shakti TV to witness live telecast of the Sapparam on the 31st of August from 5:30 p.m. and the Thair on the 1st of September from 6:30 a.m. Shakti TV, power of the nation.
TV1. TV for life.
Now, Sri Lanka's attention is on the presidential election scheduled for the 21st of September 2024. Now, despite all the developments surrounding the presidential election that has gained focus in the recent past, Sri Lanka today experienced commotion at the Department of Immigration and Emigration. Now, to give us a brief on this, I have with me today Shalan Benedict. Shalan, what happened at the Department of Immigration and Emigration today?
Well, Jawad, it's nothing new. The incidents at the Department of Immigration and Emigration is nothing new for people here in Sri Lanka. We're used to queues because we've had so many during the past, and there was a build-up of such queues at the Department of Immigration and Emigration. And this time, to collect passports, we've been having a shortage of passports, and especially license issued by several departments, including driver's license as well. We've seen this happen over and over and over again. And despite many claims that Sri Lanka is now back to normal, these issues, these very, very basic requirements for a society to function, such as documents relating to the identity of a person. A passport is a document that could, not having a passport would prevent you from traveling overseas. So what has happened is the fact that since we're transitioning now to an e-passport system to also address the issue of costs as far as procuring physical passports goes, there is a massive shortage of passports. 750,000 blank passports have been ordered, but that stock only comes in October. So what's the solution until then? According to the Minister of Public Security, the prior booking system that was introduced to allocate a specific time for a specific person to come, not waste their time at the department and get a passport, that system has been cancelled, and now it's on a first-come, first-served basis. People have already started sitting across the Department of Immigration and Emigration for days. We will have to see, though, if this will convert itself into one of those incidents where people had to stand in line, stand in queue for days.
Thank you, Shalan. Now, for a comprehensive report on this story and more local stories, tune into our primetime news bulletin at 9 on TV1.
TV1. TV for life.
Welcome back to Face to Face. We are in conversation with Mr. Ravi Karunanayake, National Secretary of the UNP. Now, Ravi, we were speaking about the economic aspects, but what about the political aspects? Is there no hope for rapprochement between the SJB and the UNP, or is the personality clash between the two leaders so great that it's not going to happen?
Well, today you have seen a completely political transformation where political parties that were at loggerheads in the past are all of them working together. So it is simply not an impossibility. That possibility have happened, those parties are working together. So I guess it's a time when everybody is working towards that type of thing. I guess first you've got to get past the election. And on the 21st of September, with the will of the people, I'm sure with the country that deserves a way forward, we hope and pray that Ranil wins. With that gigantic win, then you can start a nation development with absolutely encompassing everybody in. And that's the way forward for the country.
Now, Ravi, whoever wins the presidential election, then we are likely to have a general election very soon. But the chances are that not one single party will gain a majority. Let us assume that. Of course, it's possible that a party might do so. But if not, then it becomes absolutely vital for parties to work together in Parliament. Otherwise, everything gets blocked. How would you pass a budget?
Well, Neeraj, you could see to this time is a time when one member in Parliament galvanized everybody and managed to come forward with various changes. I don't think the country has gone through a number of bills and acts that have come into Parliament as much as this period. So without having a government of your own, mobilize every single person and work to the collective good as what has happened today. Now the election that is coming on the 21st of September, I'm sure every Sri Lankan, because there is a general huge gap between the politicians and the general people. There's a huge gap of dissatisfaction that needs to be rectified. Now in that process, you are being called upon to give leadership to the country. So I'm sure there are 39 presidential candidates. All of them have to respond to people's wishes that are there. Now when you come on to the youth, they are basically looking at not fanciful, giving something from the womb to the tomb. All they want to do is stand on their own feet without any political patronage. So they want to see where is the professional leadership that comes in. Not to say I'm going to give this in the morning, this in the evening, everything from government. No, they don't want it. They want to say, how is it that I get a share of the nation development into my own purse? So that innocent youth is looking forward to how that proposal would be given. Now nobody has given such ideas today. Now today is just 25 days away from the election. Except for Ranil Wickremesinghe, nobody has challenged the system as to how that youth would be made an entrepreneur into a very successful entrepreneur into the future. How Sri Lanka would be added on to the world. Those ideas have not come from anybody except for Wickremesinghe. Then the way forward, modernizing the economy. I mean, today the economy must be modernized. We are living in the 70s, 80s in the way with our peers that are in the region. So we need to quicken up pace, rectify our anomalies that are there and get to the next step. Then agriculture must be made once again modernized, so high-tech. That high-tech operation is the way forward. Then the digitization of the economy. Then you have got to look at, the human rights and all those things that are there that needs that the world is basically looking at. How we are able to have market access to the world. Today you can't live on a 22 million population in Sri Lanka. You have to be economies of scale advantage that is there. So you have got to have market access in the region. That's where you have the market access that comes in through free trade agreements or regional agreements. Those are the way forward, like BIMSTEC or whether it is the ASEAN that is there. That's the way that you're going to take Sri Lanka to the next step. I guess with India being our closest neighbor, with they having a 10 trillion economy in the next 3-4 years, if we get just 2% of that, our country will be thriving. That's where we have got to do. So who has that sagacity to take that country to that level? Hasn't it be that Vikram Singh is the only one who has given that? All the others are blaming, they are cursing, they are, breaking a wedge between the haves and the have-nots. But that doesn't make a nation building. You need people who are able to take success out of one stepping stone that is there and make that as a success story. That's where we have got to take it to. So I guess that's where the voters should be looking at it and ensuring that it's not being popular. You've got to do what is good for the country. That's where Ranil Singh has been, in the last 2 years, keeping aside election rhetoric. He has said, I'll invest in the country rather than in himself as popularity.
Now, you mentioned 39 candidates. However, it is now down to 38 because one candidate passed away, unfortunately. But 38 is quite a large number.
Yeah.
More than
it's a carnival.
Absolutely.
It's a circus, I'm sorry.
Yes. Now, yes, it seems something of a circus, but it is, as I mentioned earlier, a three-horse race, a three-cornered tussle. And one issue which the public generally wanted was that those who were in the party that was responsible for the economic collapse should not be elected again when a general election comes. However, we see that a large number of SLPP MPs have now left the SLPP and they have gone to various parties, including the UNP. Now, isn't that somewhat self-defeating for the UNP?
No, I think it's quite wrong. The last time you came here, you were saying that it was one political family and Vikram Singh are getting together, and whether that will be positive or not. Now that has completely, they are on their own. So then where does that equation take place? So I guess all these are political rhetorics, which I'm only using as an example that you asked. But what I basically say is that you mentioned there are 39 candidates or 38 as of now. My belief is that out of the 38, who is the one who has the most competent factor? This is not a time when the country can afford to get in a car, putting an elbow and going. You can't be hammering yourself in all corners in the on your drive forward. You have to have that knowledge, experience, and the able to navigate through turbulent times. That is where I think the experience is required. My feeling is, as I said before, people today grudgingly will basically say, this guy has done something when the others were wanting to do at that moment. When there was not even $100,000 in the central bank as reserves of the country, there were 22 ships that came to Sri Lanka and left without able to discharge the oils that they brought in. You basically have today $5,700 million as a reserve that is heading towards able to make it about a 12 to 13 in the next 2-3 years. Now, in that process, when they didn't have a dollar, where are the 38 that are contesting today? Were they able to give an answer? I mean, when the going gets tough, only the tough get going. And that is where you are able to show that Ranil Vikram Singh had the experience and the wherewithal and the knowledge to carry it forward.
Now let's
so I guess you're saying that there were people. No, it was, the factor was, it was saying one family. Now when that is basically evaporated, now it comes to the next story. I mean, the opposition didn't have a story to sell thereafter. For about 3-4 weeks they were silent. Now that is where the actual situation. So I guess this is not a grudge battle. This is a battle of experience. This is the way to take Sri Lanka to the next step. 76 years of mismanagement, if you say, then this is the one that you have to manage it well, because you miss this step and you go down a precipice never to come back again.
So you believe that this is our last chance?
Our only chance. Our only chance. because it's not something that you can be experimenting every day.
And you can't be chasing governments out of power every day either.
No, you can't. You have to have stability, and you have to have, as I said, a corporate plan for the country. And it has to have firm policies rather than changing it every month or every year.
Now let's talk about the executive presidency, which many have blamed for the ills of and the bad decisions of the previous government. And now, of course, you have many candidates who are promising to abolish the executive presidency should they be elected. What do you think, Ravi? Is this the last presidential election that we'll see, or is it that now this is a promise that I've personally heard for 30 years from President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga, who first made the promise, I believe, and it's been 30 years and the executive presidency is still there. But are you hoping that this is the last one?
My frank feeling is that this system is, the power is vested too much in one person, and it needs to be very carefully re-looked at. And that re-looking at it, I guess, needs to, I mean, you don't have experienced players like Ranil Wickremesinghe that can come into the future. So I guess all must say, there's no point just me telling personally. I basically feel that there has to be a complete reorientation. Look at it, what is the need of the hour, and get to that particular point. But I think one person has far too much powers, which basically can be used in the wrong manner, as happened in the past. So we need a rectification, and I guess President Wickremesinghe can see through that, get elected, get it run through, and then sit and ensure that we do something for the future of our younger generation and for the sake of our country.
Now, with this three-cornered tussle, it is quite likely that no single candidate will get the 50% plus one. So then it would go to the count on the second round. In the ballot paper, you do have a number 2, which you can, and a number 3. But most people are not aware of this. How significant is this second round?
Well, it is significant simply because of it's being in the law. But I don't think that plays an absolute big role, because the one who gets the highest factor of it will certainly be able to look at going through the rest of it, because very few percentage really votes on the second and the third preference. So my feeling is that I believe that it will be a win on the first run, and my feeling is that Wickremesinghe would make it through the first run, because the lack of knowledge on many of the others. You said it is a three-cornered one. As for me, I feel that it is a more solid approach than that. And let's see, and I hope the people also think the same way I would, because I think this country has gone through far too much a tortuous process. It needs to have a healing process, and at this particular moment there's no other better knowledgeable person than Wickremesinghe.
Now, what about President Wickremesinghe's team? Who would be Prime Minister? Who would be Finance Minister? Not that many of the other parties have revealed their teams, but what about the UNP?
I think we basically have submerged ourselves as a party in order that we have embraced everybody, rather than say that it is a particular party nominee. That's why it's coming independent, because I think it's an investment in trying to get every single person together. And that together culture has to basically shred away from political parties. So let's get the election past us and ensure that we have a sense of new political culture that comes in, and then you will have an election which will bring the best of talent. There is no more opportunity that will be there for just electing people. It will be electing capable people who can get the job done.
Right. Now, let's assume that President Wickremesinghe is re-elected, and then, of course, we would have some general elections because the coalition which was supporting him seems to have gone to pieces, that is the SLPP rather. And then, of course, Ravi, you have this local government elections.
SLPP, out of the hundreds of members, 120 people, there are almost 103 that are supporting Ranil's independent candidature. So it is that entire thinking process is there together.
So if we were to win, would we not see the dissolution?
There will be general election.
General election, right. And that would come almost immediately. Around the end of the year. But what about the local government election? Because there was a Supreme Court judgment last week on that, which requires the Election Commission to hold that election as soon as possible after the other two.
So I mean the order of now elections is not something that you just basically have for the sake of having it. The presidential election, the most decisive one of them all, so that's being held. Then next to that is the general election, and then you can get to the local election. I mean, just because one was due and the country was ill-affordable to have it does not mean that you just come out of it and have. My suggestion is that you have the presidential, general, and then you follow it up with the relevant elections that are there. Now you could see that there's far too many elections in the process, but stabilization of the country is the most important aspect of this. I mean, an election costs almost 12 billion. General election will cost 25 billion, 20 billion. Local election would almost be the same. So you're spending almost 55 billion on 3 elections. You can build 1 or 2 Mahavali dams that are there. So, I mean, this is not the expense of democracy. But what is more important? Getting the country out of bankruptcy? That is where the presidential is most important. Now, earlier they were saying whether Ranil will have the election, whether he will come. You also asked that question. Now, he is coming. Elections are being held. So the sense of cynicism can be wiped out and ensure that that is the way forward for the country.
Interesting thoughts indeed. Now, where do we stand with our foreign policy? And it's probably coincidental, but we have had several foreign warships visiting us. In the last 1 week, we've had 3 US Navy ships, 1 Indian warship, which is actually one of their finest warships, and now we've got 3 Chinese warships. Of course, they are on supposedly regular visits, but the timing is possibly too good to be true. Seems like a little bit of reminding everybody about their interests in Sri Lanka.
Or we can say they're earning revenue, foreign exchange. I mean, if every day we can have some country sending something, that's also a sell, because we are strategically well positioned. Instead of being a virgin harbor, we get everybody coming in. You know, you have Americans today, Indians tomorrow, Chinese day after, French, the European Union, or whether it's British, or whether it's Australians. Why not make it so that like tourism coming in, let them come and go. But as for us, we should be friends with all, enemies with none. That should be our foreign policy. Encashing that into investment-oriented approach in tourism, in health tourism, education tourism, in basically ensuring that we bring technology which is alien to us, investing with our local investors and make it to a better tomorrow. That's the way how countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, how Hong Kong did it previously. This is the way forward. You know, we can't be like frogs in a well. We need to think uniquely and innovatively.
And I'm afraid we are now running out of time. My thanks to Mr. Ravi Karunanayake, National Secretary of the UNP. Thank you, Ravi, for being with us again.
Thank you very much, Nilesh, for giving the opportunity at MTV. I'm sure we will look at as to how to do very many nation development exercise and make the country to a better, progressive and a more innovative looking country into the future.
And thank you very much to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. So have a good evening.